Bartholomew Town.
Welcome into Bartholomew Town. I'm Bill Bartholomew. Obviously a huge week for Democrats across the country, particularly when you take a look at the governor's races and when you take a look at New York City, which is where we're going to start right now. A lot of things are being made of what took place in New York with Mamdani and the victory there. I think one conversation that you're going to hear a lot of, in fact, you've already heard some of it, is how does it apply to Rhode Island? I'd make the argument, and I will today in this podcast, that it's actually not just what took place in New York, but I think when you look around the country at those governor's races and even some of the General Assembly races in deep South states and things like that, there's some trends there that are definitely going to inform what we are looking towards in 2026 in a big election year here in the Ocean State, obviously headlined by a governor's race that right now features incumbent Governor Dan McKee and Helena Bonanno Folks, who is challenging McKee for the second time. She, the former CVS executive. Don't be surprised if more people get into that race. And also on the ground in the Providence mayoral race. I think that's the one that really a lot of people are looking to New York and saying, can we duplicate that or at least replicate that here in Providence? Incumbent Mayor Brett Smiley being challenged in a primary by David Morales, he a Democratic socialist who is a member of the House of Representatives and has definitely built a bit of an online game and has definitely cultivated a following in and around the city of Providence. So what does this mean for Rhode Island? Well, let's take a step back first and just assess what took place in New York City. Let's start right there. Lived in New York for 10 years, still am definitely in the orbit of New York City. I think all of Rhode Island, I've made that argument plenty of times, that Rhode Island is in many ways exo-urban territory to both New York and Boston, uniquely positioned. So as the city of New York goes in many ways, so too goes the state of Rhode Island. But I'm not so sure politically that's going to be the case. What is definitely true is that Zohran Mamdani was able to build a coalition that was way larger than just the progressive left, Democratic Socialists, even Democrats. And something about that statement right there is what really needs to resonate for political observers in Rhode Island. It's about coalition building. And to do that, you have to be able to understand who you're speaking to and how you're speaking to them. Mamdani won this race not on major national issues, not on international global affairs, and even on a local level. He was so tailored, so focused really on the three big issues, right? Housing, transit, food insecurity. And that speaks to New Yorkers because over the last decade, last 15 years, New York has become so unaffordable for many, many people. I don't want to say most people because there's obviously millions of people living there, but it's become so unaffordable for many people that it is not even an option to live in New York. And that includes people who were born and raised in the city. And people across the city right now of a wide array of political ideology and backgrounds and engagement in elections, whatever, are definitely feeling the squeeze on a regular basis when it comes, let's start with housing, all right? Housing costs in New York completely out of control and something that no matter where you sit other than a handful of people, you go around and polling shows this, anecdotal evidence shows this, just the general sense and sort of tone and tenor of the city right now shows that people are going, what the hell is going on with housing here? We're not going to have a sustainable city if we continue on this trend. So that issue in and of itself and the focus with which Mamdani was able to wrap that issue into a conversational and look, there's no specific plan that is a definite slam dunk. Hey, this is how we're going to solve the housing crisis. But just by talking about it in a way that meets people where they are, that was in and of itself a mobilizing, engaging, and ultimately victorious strategy for the previously pretty much unknown General Assembly member that just completely blew a lot of people's minds over the course of this election cycle by becoming the mayor-elect in New York City. And of course, look, Mamdani had a unique situation going up against an incumbent in Eric Adams that is wholly unlikable. And then a Democrat corporate stooge in Andrew Cuomo, he the sexual predator of sorts. I mean, look, at minimum from a sexual harassment standpoint, you look at him and you feel gross about it. But more than anything, I think that is secondary to the fact that Cuomo represented the old. He represented the establishment. He represented the corporate. I think it was poetic that Trump ostensibly endorsed him. Elon Musk ostensibly endorsed him with this whole, hey, we're afraid of socialism type of mindset. Really what it was is we want to stand up corporations. We want to protect the corporate interests that dominate our politics, that dominate New York City specifically. And that is what was rejected. And that fault line is the most important thing to remember about what took place in New York specifically when it comes to applying that to our 2026 election here in Rhode Island. What do I mean? It's a question of out with the old, in with the new. Will Rhode Islanders be excited about just that notion? If that's the case, you may see an electorate that responds to both a Helena Bonanno folks. They may look at her as, well, this is new. She obviously ran in 2022, but at the same time, this is new energy, new people. It's coming from a different place than the McKee administration. We just want to go a different direction, even though she would certainly be somebody that you look at and you go, well, she's corporate. I mean, by design, she was the CEO. She was a president at CVS. She is corporate, but she also represents and checks that box of new, right? David Morales in Providence checks that box of new. So you could see this sort of coalition forming of people who are just going, forget about it. Everything doesn't seem to be working right now. Housing in Rhode Island, similarly to New York, completely out of control. And while stutter step approaches have been taken and a building opens up here or there and an announcement comes about some legislation or a study commission, I don't think people on the ground here in Rhode Island feel much differently than the vast majority of people in New York about housing, which is that there doesn't seem to be a sustainable solution and is driving people out of, in this case, the state, in the case of New York, out of the city. And it's making people think about leaving, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Hasbro left because of a housing crisis. Well, that was definitely baked into the ingredients of why Hasbro left Rhode Island and is going to Boston. Not that Boston's a whole heck of a lot better, but when you take a look at the exo-urban region in Boston and the commuter system, the transit piece, there's a lot more opportunity there. That's just one issue that resonated across the board in New York. And so if you want to sit here and say, well, Mamdani won, therefore David Morales has just got to do the exact same thing, the question is going to be, number one, the coalition that Mamdani was able to build across the political spectrum and the fact that he was up against such loathable or comical figures, right? Eric Adams, Andrew Cuomo, Curtis Sliwa. These are not serious candidates, okay? And that frankly is part of the reality here. Whereas Brett Smiley, love him, hate him, anything in between, is a serious candidate by virtue of the incumbency that he has. And I think his coalition looks around and says, well, there are problems in our state. We feel like we're on track to solve them. And we don't want to go that direction of the new. We don't want to go that direction of the outsider. Forget about the politics, the Democratic Socialist labels, any of that. We're cool with Smiley. We want to give him some more time because we think we're trending in the right direction. That's what McKee's going to be banking on. I think he's going to have a hard time when you consider the fact that he's got the lowest approval rating of all governors in the country. Smiley will have an easier time of selling, hey, we're trying to do some things here. We need some more time, right? But that is the lane. That is the number one thing to take away from New York. Coalition building based on rejecting the status quo. It's pretty basic. You don't need a political science degree to understand that. But we've gotten to a point where we're analyzing metrics, we're analyzing specific issues, and even tone and tenor, or the fact that Mamdani was so strong on social media, David Morales has got a social media game that's expanding. Perhaps that is a litmus test to show how Morales can win. No. What Rhode Islanders are going to be looking at is, how's my life? And how's my kin's life? And how's my future in this state feel today? How do I feel about my life as a Rhode Islander in, well, let's say, August, September of 2026? If enough people go in Providence, you know what? We need to make some major changes. They're going to flip to Morales. If more people go, okay, it's pretty good, actually, then Smiley's going to win. So what has to happen here? If you're David Morales or you're anybody who is taking that outsider perspective, you've got to understand the core realities of what people are facing in the city of Providence, in Morales' case. If you're Bonanno folks, the realities of what people are facing on a statewide basis, and translate that into language that makes you appear at minimum, if not are actually an ambassador for those who have been left behind or displaced. Okay? And that's exactly what the superb communications that Mamdani brought to the table did. And that's why he was able to deliver the coalition that dominated this, first the Democrat primary and then this general election. Okay? So that is a little different than what you're hearing. The simplistic way to look at it is go, well, a Democratic socialist who's really good at social media and has a communications persona that is recognizable was able to win in New York and win handedly. So therefore, David Morales can kind of take the same route and build a similar coalition. I just think it has to be uniquely Rhode Island, uniquely Providence, if you're going to see that. The same formula will not apply here. It will not apply here from the standpoint of demographics, and it will not apply here because I think more people in Rhode Island, although you're going to hear people say, yeah, we do have a housing crisis. Then you say, well, do you like your apartment? Do you like your home? You're going to get more people who are feeling comfortable about their lives in Rhode Island than you are in New York City, for example, okay? But I know folks is going to have this challenge as well. While people are going to moan and groan about the Washington Bridge and McKee's this and that, the question is going to be, are you so upset about the status quo of your life that you want to see a change and you're willing to get behind, in the case of Bonanno Folks, somebody who is at the end of the day wholly corporate? If that is in fact the case and she's able to sell that message and she's able to go out and communicate on behalf of those whose transit options have been reduced, on behalf of those who can't afford an apartment on Aquidneck Island because of Airbnb, on behalf of those who have been left behind because of food insecurity issues, on behalf of those businesses that have been crushed by the Washington Bridge situation. If she can be an authentic voice there, none of her other credentials or policy positions will matter as much as the fact that people will look and go, Helena's my girl. See what I'm saying here? Insider versus outsider. That is the litmus test. This is where Republicans can make some progress in Rhode Island if they'd like to. I don't think they will. I think you're going to hear a bunch of garbage about culture war nonsense. Cat litter boxes being set up in elementary schools for kids who wear cat ears. The usual transgender sports garbage. The usual, we're giving housing or health care to undocumented people, so therefore we got to set the world on fire. I bet you're going to get a lot of that garbage, and that's why Republicans will continue to be embarrassed at the polls in Rhode Island, because they just don't understand this insider versus outsider mentality. And this is why when you take a look at Curtis Sliwa going back to New York, I mean, the guy obviously a total joke in a lot of ways. At the same time, good for Curtis Sliwa. I salute him. Perhaps I should get a red beret for a temporary salute, because the guy held on to a fundamental value, which is, hey, things are broken, and we are looking at it from the outside. And by staying in that race, did it take away the election from Andrew Cuomo? No, the numbers weren't there. Mamdani was dominant. It wouldn't have mattered at all if Curtis Sliwa dropped out of the race. Andrew Cuomo was a total joke of a candidate, lackadaisical, disconnected, confused, and confusing, unable to answer some of the most basic questions, and offering a persona that just felt and was sleazy.
Bartholomew Town.
You've been hearing me talk a lot about Navigant Credit Union, and for good reason. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communications, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience, message, and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. You can learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by Newport Film. Check out newportfilm.com for all the latest screening details. Are you ready to take the next step in your career? At URI Online, we offer business and leadership-focused programs designed to fit your life. Whether your goal is to advance your career in fields like public administration, supply chain management, or training and development, our online programs provide the flexibility you need with the high-quality education you deserve. Learn from experienced faculty and collaborate with a network of professionals, all from the comfort of your home or wherever life takes you. Visit uri.edu/online to explore programs and start building your future today. URI Online. Learn anywhere with us. But by being in the race, Curtis Sliwa once again elevated more voices who are feeling disconnected. That's the fault line, folks. It's not progressive versus conservative, progressive versus traditional Democrat in and of itself. It's who is going to be an ambassador for those people who feel left behind. That could be Morales. That could be Bonanno Folks. It could be in a lieutenant governor's race, somebody that gets in there and says, Matos has been doing X, Y, Z, or actually probably more like X and Y, because nobody really knows what she's been up to. She ran for Congress, right? Got crushed in the Congress race, had the signature scandal. Now, every now and then you get a pamphlet about food stuff. I did see her team out doing some work on SNAP benefits. I thought that was good to see. But for example, with Sabina Matos, she's super vulnerable because I think a lot of people can point to a lot of candidates could point to just the reality of how's your life feeling, Rhode Islander? Do you think it's going well? What do you think that the lieutenant governor has done to enhance your life? Okay, well, with that being the case, if you're saying very little, I'm telling you, here's the things that I can do. Here's the way that I'm going to improve your life. This is basic stuff here, all right? Basic politics. And the more we overanalyze what took place in New York, okay, and how that can apply here on a political, ideological level, the more we're going to get off track. Going into 2026, it's going to be about rejecting the status quo, period. Let me say it again. Going into 2026, it's going to be a race about rejecting the status quo, period, which is why you're going to see odd bedfellows like a Helena Bonanno Folks, a technocrat, who at the end of the day is trying to position herself as somewhat of a progressive. She's taking photos on the RIPTA and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day is, kind of a not kind of, she's a corporate Democrat. And Morales, a Democrat socialist, they're going to be in tandem in many ways. They may not campaign together, but theoretically, if you're a Providence resident voting in a Democrat primary, you may very well choose David Morales and Helena Bonanno Folks simply by virtue of the fact that they're different and you don't feel your life is in a place that it should be. The question is going to be on the statewide basis and even on a citywide basis, how many Rhode Islanders go, I need to change things up. We need to change things up, and I feel like I've got somebody who speaks for me. Now, speaking of that, I want to take a look at the two governor's races, obviously New Jersey and Virginia. Two things. First of all, women, good to see, obviously, on a fundamental level. Duh. I mean, that's a baseline statement. But more than anything, here's the thing. You had two candidates who were able to approach that rejection of the status quo piece, right? But in areas that are certainly not Democrat socialist country, in some ways aren't even Democrat territory, right? They were able to approach it with, we want to change that which is the day-to-day operations of your life and your government. You're sick and tired of what you're seeing from Trump, put a Democrat in there. You're sick and tired of what you're seeing from, the whole machine, the MAGA machine, put a woman Democrat in there. But here's the main thing. Those two governors' races featured candidates from the Democrat side who resonated on a specific occupational and even avocational level with the regions that were most critical. CIA, retired CIA, military experience, all of these things were methods, if nothing else, for the MAGA machine to to be reduced, if not completely squashed, in their ability to sit here and say, these people are unpatriotic, anti-American, far-left, radical, lunatic thugs. And from an occupational standpoint, you talk about Northern Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia, this, so on and so forth, a place where people have been laid off or furloughed, or their jobs completely eliminated because of the government garbage cuts. Occupationally and geographically, they resonated. They were, in many, many ways, MAGA-proof Dems. Okay? And that's a huge difference between what took place in New York. And I think watching both of those things play out leads me back to the same place. What do people want? People want to know that somebody understands their struggle. Okay? Maybe that struggle is extreme. Can't afford housing, can't afford food. No vehicle, you're relying on public transit. That public transit's not sufficient. You need childcare, you can't afford it. You need medical care, can't afford it. Baseline stuff right there that should be taken care of in a civilized society that simply isn't. Okay, and now as a result of that, there's a huge poverty expansion. The haves and have-nots, massive expansion, right? But people also who are not in an enormous struggle right now felt a need to change. They felt a need to shift away from that which was happening before them, in front of them, and they felt a need to come home. A couple of women who represent them and feel like them, feel like their community, feel sophisticated in the areas that they need to be sophisticated in, experienced in the areas they need to be experienced in, and also can speak their language, which may or may not always be sophisticated. That's what happened in Virginia, okay? No doubt about it right there. And that's what happened in New Jersey as well. I think the New Jersey race, very interesting because you take a look at the history of New Jersey governors, John Corzine, obviously Chris Christie, a couple of terms there, and then you get Phil Murphy. So there's been a back and forth of a pendulum swing in New Jersey, right, left, Republican, Democrat, historically now for decades. And for that to not be the case anymore, without going Governor Phil Murphy now, Sherrell coming in as a Democrat and expanding the continuation of Democrat control at the governor's level in New Jersey, all right? I think that's interesting right there in and of itself, that people in critical voting blocks and in critical counties, frankly, looked around and said, we're not necessarily so uncomfortable with the status quo that we want to flip parties. We're just uncomfortable with the status quo on a federal level, that we don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. So there's a lot of different layers to this. I hope I'm explaining this in a reasonable way, how my brain is processing this election, which is also why I took an extra day. I didn't want to just jump on yesterday and say, wow, can you believe it? I did put some stuff on Instagram, a little bit of goofy stuff, laying on my bed, talking in a Southern accent or something about Mamdani or whatever. There's plenty to celebrate. There's plenty to be excited about. If we're doing this from an analytical standpoint of what to look for in Rhode Island, the takeaways from this race to me are outsider candidates who rejected or opposed that which felt repressive had success, and candidates who spoke the language of their communities had success. I think the governors, I think Mamdani, I think some of the General Assembly races, even in some of the deep South states that flipped as well, all had that criteria. That's the bellwether that I'm looking at. How does that apply to Rhode Island? Well, we're going to find out. And that's the beauty of it. We'll find out together here on Bartholomew Town. You can listen to Bartholomew Town, by the way, anywhere that you get podcasts, ripodcast.com. We're also now on YouTube. But of course, give us a listen on the radio on WPRO, whether you're in Boston, Providence, or even New Haven, Connecticut, 6:30 a.m. You're going to pick it up, not the time of day, 6:30 on your AM dial, Bartholomew Town on Saturday afternoons. Okay, so maybe you have a thought on this. Bill at ripodcast.com. Email me anytime. Follow me on social media at Bill Bartholomew, particularly Instagram. And let's keep an eye on this together. You know what I'm saying? Insider versus outsider. Let's take a chill pill on the whole. David Morales is the next Mamdani. Helena Bonanno Folks is the next Sherrell. You have to ask those next level questions. Are they speaking the right language? Are they taking an outsider position? And in this case, the state of Rhode Island or the city of Providence, depending on the particular race, are people that uncomfortable that they want to mix things up? I don't know that it'll be consistent across the board. At the same time, I would not be surprised to see a complete sweep of new candidates being elected in 2026 in Democrat primaries. And I also would not be surprised to see each incumbent win, because I think that as much as we hear from Rhode Islanders that say, I can't believe the unhoused crisis, I can't believe that we have the food insecurity, I can't believe that our education is where it's at. Hey, can you believe this housing stuff? I mean, I can't believe these Airbnbs are popping up everywhere. Boy, they cut a bunch of buses out of the transit system that are critical. I can't believe that somehow, some way, we have hospitals that are basically threatening to close. We have a major, major gap in care when it comes to dental, when it comes to primary care physicians. And we have a situation right now as well where we have an inequitable tax system. When you take a look at some of the largest nonprofits and universities, at the same time, some property owners in Providence are looking at an 8% or so property tax increase going forward. And they might all say, that's bad, but pretty much I'm good. I like my life. I'm not really that worried about it. How worried are Rhode Islanders? How much do they want to shake things up? Because 2025 for Democrats, it was an election about shaking things up and coming home. I'm Bill Bartholomew. This is Bartholomew Town at ripodcast.com and on WPRO Radio. We'll talk next time. Bartholomew Town is brought to you by Navigant Credit Union, Half Street Group, the University of Rhode Island Online, and Newport Film.